Hey, I was Let here with Recoil and Redemption. I wanted to bring y'all a quick story for this shooting incident that was involved in October of last year, right after Hurricane Helene. So, my area was hit and everything, and right after the hurricane, I decided to go get some Chinese food for dinner, and the Chinese place wasn't taking cards, so I had to go across the street to get cash. And so, as I'm proceeding back into the parking lot with the money for the food, there was a gentleman that had a gun raised. Well, he had a gun in the air, and he was walking side to side, and he seemed kind of distraught and everything. So I don't think I seen was basically just a guy with a gun. Looked like he was waving around. So what I ended up doing was I literally just pulled into the parking lot, and then I had stopped my vehicle, and I ended up grabbing my AR pistol, and I had my handgun on me at the time, but I was thinking that if I had to use it, I wasn't that proficient with a handgun, and that I'm more comfortable with my rifle than I am a handgun. So I grabbed that, and I had started walking at a circular angle towards him, and I noticed there was a guy probably about 20-30 feet in front of him that was laying on the ground. So meanwhile, while I'm walking behind him, I'm probably like maybe 10 feet away from this guy with the gun. So I point my gun at him, and I'm yelling at him to put the gun down. And then he turns and looks at me and says that, that the other guy shot at him, and that he was just defending himself. So then he ends up, taking his gun and put it on the top of his vehicle. And meanwhile, while all that's happened, I'm walking, I start walking backwards towards the guy that was laying on the ground. And while my gun is still trained on him, and so then I end up squatting down and kneeling down and put my gun on the ground while I'm still facing the other guy, just in case the incident decides to escalate. And so I started performing what I could for his first aid, but I did not have my med kit on me. And this other guy walked up, and me and him performed first aid as much as we could. We noticed that he had a gunshot wound through his chest. It was a through and through. And at the time, I didn't know that he had another gunshot wound through his pelvis area near his groin. And so during that time, I'm yelling for somebody to call 911, and somebody informs me that 911 has been called and that they're on their way. So me and this guy, we're praying for him, and we're applying pressure to his wounds. And then probably about like maybe 3 to 5, give or take, minutes later, the police officer shows up, arrests the guy that had did the shooting, and he puts him in the back of his car, comes up towards me, and I inform the officer that the AR is mine. So he grabs that, puts it in the front of his vehicle, and then he comes up and starts performing first aid on the guy. He pulls out his med kit, puts a chest seal on the front and back of his chest, and he that's when he ends up the officer finds the other gunshot wound through his pelvic area. And the officer has me apply pressure to it while he stuff it with gauze. And then shortly after that, some more officers and EMS shows up. And then when they came, I got out of the way and I let them perform their duties. And then the officer, took me and had me sit on the curb. And they start questioning me and everything. And I informed them, as far as everything I saw that happened. And then sometime later on after that, they put me in the back of this police car with some other police officers standing there watching me. Mind you, I didn't have to fire any rounds or anything. So, they questioned me, and they told me they got to hold me until forensic gets there. because I got blood on my hands and everything. So I would say it was probably roughly about, I'm gonna say 1 to 2 in the afternoon during that time, and I didn't get to leave there until probably roughly about 6 or 7 that evening. And I did get my AR back, and they was like, hey, you did a good job. There's not too many people that would have stepped up and did what you did. But I was just, informing them, I'm just glad I could do what I could, and that I'm glad I didn't have to pull the trigger. And then later on, come to find out the guy that did shot him, he was acting in self-defense. So that made it even better. But my whole thing is, my biggest takeaway behind the thing is that, and some of my regrets is that I wish I would have had, more training in my handgun, with my handgun, because of the precious time that it took for me to, grab my AR out my bag and, deploy that and get out and get ready. Is a time, I would have been, a lot less than that if I would have just grabbed my handgun, and jumped in the incident. But my biggest regret of it all is because I had a med kit on me, but I had it in my car, but I did not even think to grab that. So luckily the person that was shot did survive. But all in all, if it was another situation, or it could have been worse, to where, the time that it took the officer to get there and perform first aid on the guy, that it could have been, in between that time, the guy could have lost his life because I wasn't, medically ready on a situation like that. So anytime you decide, if you're going to be carrying a firearm, or even if you don't decide to carry a firearm, it's always good to have some type of either meds on you or somewhere nearby, just in case you come up on a shooting incident. And that you can also definitely get training on the first aid, so you know what you're doing. But even if you don't have the training, maybe there'll be somebody around that knows, that has training on it, can, use your equipment to help save that person's life. And another thing that came up to my mind, what I always been thinking about for a while, was, what if that was me in that situation where, I'm defending myself, and somebody ended up pulling a gun on me, telling me to drop my gun. It's best, I was thinking it's best to go ahead and just put your gun down and, just wait until the cops come, because you don't want to be too trigger happy and end up shooting somebody who was defending themselves. Because I can definitely see that happening if, tensions are high. You don't know who's in it or who's not. So it's best, just just definitely don't be too trigger happy, and just try to stay as calm and poised as possible, so you don't make the wrong mistake. But that's it for right now. Y'all have a great day. Stay blessed. And until next time.